I saw them, waiting, always waiting. Every glance I offered, every word I spoke, every fleeting gesture I allowed. They drank it like air. They relied on me, not as a companion, not as an equal, but as a pillar, a lifeline, a mirror for their own fragile selves. I became their rhythm, their heartbeat, their reason to move. I smiled, I nodded, I laughed, I suffered, I reacted, I sustained, I carried the weight of their dependency, and still, they never noticed the toll it took. Now, silence, and in that silence, chaos stirs. It crawls through their minds, cracks their certainty, shakes the foundation they built upon my presence. They flail, they claw, they search for the spark they thought I owned. I do not reach for them. I do not feed their hunger. I do not bow to their expectations anymore. I stand calm, a shadow among their unraveling, their panic, their confusion, their fear. It is mine to observe, and I watch it grow, slowly, steadily, like fire licking the edges of a dry forest. I was their reflection, their echo, their answer, and now I am none of it. I withhold, and they crumble. I do not speak to soothe them. I do not move to entertain them. I do not bend to fill the voids they could not face themselves. I simply exist, and in my existence, I am a storm, silent, inevitable, impossible to control. Every expectation they held, every fragile thread they wove, snaps in the absence of my participation. Their world shakes because I chose stillness, because I chose me. They thought I was theirs, but they never knew the cost. They never knew the shadow I carried, the weight I bore, the patience it demanded to finally step away. And now, as they stumble, as they falter, as the walls of their certainty collapse around them, I remain solid, unyielding. I am the mirror they broke. I am the silence they feared. And in their unraveling, I am free. I was their puppet, dancing to silent strings I never chose to hold. Every pull, every tug, they thought it was obedience. They thought it was loyalty. They thought it was devotion, but it was never theirs to command. It was mine to endure. I carried their weight, their expectations, their fragile egos, like chains around my shoulders. I bent, I broke, I smiled while my own world cracked, and still, they never saw me, never heard me, never felt the cost of holding them above myself. I learned, I remembered, I burned. The strings snapped, one by one, under the weight of their greed, their need, their endless appetite for reaction. And in that snapping, I found silence, and in silence, I found freedom. I do not seek their validation. I do not crave their approval. I do not answer their endless questions. I am not their candle. I am not their echo. I am not the stage upon which they perform their fears. I exist, alone and untouchable. Every moment I held back, every flicker of restraint, every word unspoken, it became armor. I transformed their manipulation into my power. Their demands, their expectations, their cries are no longer shackles. They are fuel, fuel for the fire that rises inside me. I let them hunger. I let them claw. I let them fall into the void they built around me. And with each faltering step, I step higher. With each frantic reach, I rise further. I was their puppet, but now I am the master of my own silence. And in my silence, they find nothing but the shadow of what they lost, and the storm of what they cannot touch. They rage, they claw, they tremble. In rooms where I once smiled, every corner, every shadow, every whisper they once clung to for comfort, now echoes emptiness. Their foundations crack, silently, violently, beneath the weight of absence. I stopped feeding them shadows. I stopped offering the spark that kept their fragile structures upright. And now, they flail, they stumble, they search for meaning, and find only the hollowness I left behind. They scream, they beg, they falter, and yet I remain unmoved, calm, solid, observing the world they built on my presence collapse. Piece by fragile piece, I do not move, I do not speak, I do not sway. Their chaos, it is not my burden, it is my canvas. Every frantic gesture, every trembling breath, paints the masterpiece of my liberation. They thought my reactions were theirs to command. They thought my attention was a gift, a tool they could wield. They were wrong. I withdrew. I watched. I let the unraveling happen. And with every falter, with every desperate claw for what they lost, I rise further, untouchable, unbound. I am the absence they cannot fill, the silence they cannot break, the spark they depended on, extinguished, and in the void I leave behind, they discover the cost of relying on anyone but themselves. I stand, and they fall. I am no longer the candle they lit to see their shadows. I am no longer the echo they demanded to soothe their fears. I am the storm, quiet at first, gathering strength, consuming the light they clung to, and leaving only truth in its wake. Every expectation, every demand, every whisper of need they cast at me fades now into nothing. I respond not for them. I move not for them. I am for myself. I have carried their burdens, walked their paths, bent to their fragile worlds, and in the process, I lost fragments of who I was, but I found them again, in silence, in stillness, in the moments I refused to perform. Their reliance once caged me, chained me, turned empathy into obligation. But that chain snapped, that cage crumbled, and with it, I rose. I do not apologize for my absence. I do not justify my stillness. I do not explain my autonomy. I exist, unbound, untouchable, aware of my own gravity. The power of this realization, it hums through my veins, steady, relentless, a pulse of freedom they cannot claim. I stand, no longer a shadow of expectation. I stand, the author of my silence, the master of my response. I stand, and the world I leave behind trembles, because I am awake, because I am mine, because I am unstoppable. Let them writhe, let them claw, let them search, and find only emptiness where I once existed. Madness is their inheritance, and I'm the architect. I watch them tremble, falter, descend into the chaos they nurtured with my presence. Every expectation I withheld, every glance I denied, every word unspoken, has become a blade they cannot wield against me. They called me weak. They called me kind. They called me foolish. I called myself free. And now, I watch them drown in what they craved, what they depended on, what they believed would define them. They rage. They tremble. They claw at the walls of their certainty. And I remain unmoved, calm, silent, untouchable. Their fear, it hums in the air around them, a symphony of desperation. And I am the conductor. Every frantic gesture, every tear, every desperate plea orchestrates the power I have claimed through absence. I do not strike. I do not shout. I do not intervene. I simply exist. And in my existence, they collapse. This is not vengeance. This is not cruelty. This is recognition. Recognition that I am not theirs to command, not theirs to consume, not theirs to define. And as their minds twist, as their reliance crumbles, I rise further. I rise higher. I rise. Untouchable, feared, unbound, inevitable. I am the shadow they cannot chase. I am the silence they cannot break. I am the storm they never saw coming. I answer only to myself. My silence is my strength. Their dependence is my liberation. I no longer move to soothe their fears, to fill the voids they cannot face, to feed the fragile worlds they built upon my presence. I withhold, and in withholding, I rise. Let them search, let them stumble, let them find nothing but the truth of my autonomy. I do not flinch, I do not bend, I do not apologize. The chaos they conjure in my absence, it fuels me. Every faltering step, every frantic plea, every desperate grasp for control reinforces what I have claimed, myself. Silence is no longer absence. Silence is defiance. Silence is rebellion. I do not act for them. I do not perform for them. I do not exist for their understanding. I exist, unshaken. I exist, untouchable. I exist, and the world I leave behind trembles, because it is no longer mine to shape, because it is mine to witness, and because I am free. Let them look for what they lost. Let them claw for what they craved. Let them drown in the void I leave behind, while I rise. I am the shadow they feared. I am the silence that shatters their cries. I am the storm they cannot weather, the reckoning they ignored. Every expectation I defied, every demand I withheld, every fragile hope they placed upon me has forged me into this untouchable, unstoppable, absolute. Let them hate, let them fear, let them fall, and I will stand. I rise above the chains of their dependence, above the whispers of their judgment, above the world that sought to confine me. I rise, not to conquer them, not to please them, but to claim the only throne that matters, my own. I am the quiet they cannot break, the presence they cannot control, the power they never imagined. Every faltering cry, every desperate reach, every trembling step echoes the mastery I have seized through absence, through silence, through refusal. I am fire, I am shadow, I am storm, I am the consequence of their expectation unfulfilled. They crumble beneath the weight of what they cannot touch, while I ascend, while I endure. While I am dot and in that ascendance, there is no compromise. There is no apology. There is only power, undiminished, eternal. Mine, I stand, and the world trembles, because I am unstoppable.